how do I even say that? Because I don't want to discredit people who care about what's happening in Gaza. Like, I think there are definitely a lot of people in America around the world care about what's happening in Gaza. And they're like, hey, this feels excessive and they don't want people dying, right? I also think there have been plenty of other times throughout history where like America has been responsible for the murder of tons of people, million people in Iraq. And like, yes, there are Americans who are concerned. They're like, this is fucked up. We don't like this. This is horrible. But there's a little part of Americans who are like, yeah, but the gas is like $2.50. Right. So I think there's a little part of this discussion which is kind of missing, which is like, what are we getting out of this tragedy? We're supporting.
I don't know where this is going, but shout out to him for even trying to give his take on it. Let's go ahead and get into it. Guys, you want to stick around because this is not going to be like any other video that you've ever seen on this platform. Let's go ahead and get into it.
During this tragedy, but what do we get? And I think it's on like Israel, to be honest, to explain if we're best friends, if you're our closest ally or whatever it is, like it's up to you to explain to Americans, if you want to continue to get that support, why we're so close. What is the information? Now, I hear a lot of people when I ask, they're like, we get, what is it called? Intelligence. Yeah. Okay. So intelligence can essentially mean like, hey, there's this terror attack that's going to happen. You guys should do something about it. Let's operate in best case scenario, right? And I know there's already people on there that are like, oh, you're gonna just bootlicking the Jews or whatever the fuck it is. I'm just saying best case scenario. They've given us information to thwart 20 more 9/11s, let's say. Because I doubt there's one planned attack on America, right? There's probably a bunch. Yeah. So let's say they've given us information that stops 20 others. They can't tell America, by the way, we gave you the information to stop these attacks because now you're going to give up those people that are embedded in those like terror institutions or even the country's governments that are planning these attacks. So now you remove your intelligence. That
is a very, level one way to look at it. Let's give him another 2 minutes before I give my take on even that aspect with the 9/11.
There's a version where America's giving them this amount of money a year and we're getting intelligence that is valuable to us, but you can't communicate that to American people. Okay, well, you need to figure out something else to communicate.
Even if they did communicate it, I feel like people wouldn't believe it.
That's
like,
also
imagine
possible.
They put out like, a news headline, the Israel Times, and they're like, Israel stops terror attack in America.
Yeah.
Everyone would be like, yeah, all right, of course you did.
Because now you're just saying it because it didn't happen. But if you are, because here's the reality of the world, like
they control the media.
but this is the reality of the world. It's like once something happens, like the government is always going to be a reflection of the people, right? So like if there isn't support for something in America, you will not get money eventually.
Wait.
There's waning support in America for the war in Ukraine.
Okay.
Right? Americans are kind of suffering. They feel like they don't have money here. And they were like, why are we sending billions of dollars over to this other country? I don't really know anybody from there. I don't really understand how it's an existential threat to us personally. Like, I don't get it, and I can't afford eggs. So, like, if any billions of dollars is going anywhere, send it over here first. I think that's the feeling a lot of Americans have. Okay. I think if the economy was absolutely flourishing, we don't give a fuck about U.S. aid. We don't care.
And that's probably why we are in this mess that we are in today. He's right. There is a serious, like, what's the word I'm looking for? There's an accountability that we didn't take in the past because, during early 2000s, we were flourishing. We were flourishing. Like, even though we were in this so-called war on terror that we were so-called dealing with, and I'll get to why I'm saying so-called, and I have to try really hard not to make this episode an hour long. But anyway, but it was still the early 2000s. It was still, we were still like, I feel like we were still booming. I remember being, young around that time and having a good time with my friends and not really thinking too much. Even after like maybe 2 years after 9/11. It wasn't until, I'll keep it real, I think when I started to look back on 9/11, I think it was 2011 actually when I started saying, hey, wait a second, something doesn't add up here. Because life was moving, life was, really to think about it, it's quite amazing how fast time flies. I was going to nursing school, I was doing, like I was living life. I was out of high school, I was like living life. So after a while, you almost forget. And there was a time where, I did forget. I didn't care to think about it. But let's come back to the point of what Andrew's saying, that Israel needs to tell America what they're getting from America, from Israel. the problem with his position, oh, if they stop 20 more of that situation, I have to be careful with saying names too much. You know, if they stop 20 more of that situation. But the thing is, we still don't have the official answer to what happened that day. Because you think back and you figure out, oh, if they said the Saudis did it, right? So then why did we go into Iraq? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. You start asking some questions, doing some digging, and you really get the real answer to really what happened. And then it should infuriate you.
About the training plays they're doing in the Philippines or whatever the fuck they want. But in America, when times are tough, naturally, and I think there's a very reasonable response, we start looking at where the money's going. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not spending a lot of time with your dad, but your dad's out here doing all this other shit, you have some resentment towards all those other things your dad's doing. You want to hang out. So I think in those moments, it's up to those countries that are getting help to show us the value that they're bringing to us. You have to find a way to communicate that value. Otherwise, Americans start feeling taken advantage of. Now, we might not be. And you have to leave that space open. I think people are like, they're determined that they know exactly what's going on. There's a little bit of an addiction to conspiracy in general. They're very exciting and fun. They make people feel really smart. Like, you know something nobody else knows. That's the quickest way to feeling smart.
I don't like the subversion that's happening here. Like, we're not going to have a serious conversation with somebody with, you know what I mean? Like, look, Andrew is a very well-spoken man. He is a comedian. You know, I like the fact that he's even trying to talk about some of these issues, but then of course they go right back to putting it right in the box. And you're not gonna have somebody with Daisy Dukes on and nails and think that you're gonna talk about me like this. So now I just have to go ahead and be this person.
One sometimes hears the claim these days that AIPAC took no position on the Iraq war and certainly did not advocate it. This is not true either. First of all, this claim fails the common sense test, as AIPAC usually supports what Israel wants, and Israel certainly wanted the United States to invade Iraq. Second, and more importantly, there is hard evidence that AIPAC lobbied for the war. For example, AIPAC's executive director, this is AIPAC's executive director, not Steve Walt or John Mearsheimer. AIPAC's executive director, Howard Kaur, told the New York Sun in January 2003 that one of AIPAC's successes over the past year was, quote, quietly lobbying Congress to approve the use of force in Iraq. The neoconservatives, of course, were the main driving force behind the war. They initiated the idea of using force to topple Saddam in 2 letters written to President Clinton in early 1998. Over the next 5 years, and especially after 9/11, they pushed relentlessly for a war against Iraq. No other group or institution in the United States was seriously committed to invading Iraq over that 5-year period.
I could play this and this could go on forever. Like, I mean, you know, the whole hour and hour 20 minutes and 11 seconds or whatever. Listening to, this is John Mearsheimer. This clip is from 9 years ago. 9 years ago. John Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt wrote the book Israel Lobby. Okay? This isn't Casey, and obviously it's not John Mearsheimer. He's quoting AIPAC executives, okay? This is from 9 years ago, okay? Wouldn't you think it's gotten a little bit stronger today? But pause that for a second. This is what I mean about not everybody should be talking about everything. Look, there's a lot going on, but one thing I do know is this. We claim as Americans to love our troops. Even if I don't get into what happened in Iraq, what kind of slaughter took place. You want to talk about Christians dying in the Middle East, but people, okay. Even if I don't want to get into that, this subject always strikes a feeling in my soul. It does. Because we say we love our troops, serve our veterans, especially this group that I'm talking to right now, my audience. I know you love the troops. I know you love your veterans. You say thank you for your service, right? Why are we sending, I always get this worked up, but why are we sending troops in wars that we are not supposed to be a part of? Okay? You hear who benefits from it. That right there that situation right there was manipulated in a way that should infuriate you when you know the whole truth about it. Now, obviously, I'm on a quick episode, but people want to say things like conspiracy. They want to use words like this is a conspiracy, and that's, you owe it to yourself and your country to find out what's going on with this so-called conspiracy, because we can't keep getting the same playbook ran on us every time, and then we keep falling for it every time. I don't answer to a group. I don't make no bones about it. I'm all about the inconvenient truth, because I believe that's what you deserve as anybody whose eyes landed on this video. Thank you for watching.